Today is the World Mental Health Day. Together we can knock out the stigma. Welcome to our second campfire looking at mental health. The effects of poor mental health and the mental illness impact not only on our sporting careers but also on our personal life as well. In support with England Boxing, their new mental health section and on their website, we at Box Gathering are staging 2 campfires looking and talking and listening to mental health issues around boxing, sharing experiences and hoping to get the conversation started. Joining myself, Ivan Cobb, stoking this campfire tonight, I have with me Chris. Good evening, Chris.
Evening. Hi all. My name's Chris Lodge. I coach at Miguel's in Brixton in South East London, and also a pathway coach for England Boxing.
Welcome. Next around the campfire we've got Priya.
Hi, I'm Priya Dinesha. I am from London. I coach at the All Stars Boxing Club in Paddington.
Welcome. Next up, we got Laura. Welcome, Laura.
Hey, Ivan. I'm Laura Sargent. I'm a club support officer for Tyne and Weir, and I also coach at my own club, East Middlesbrough.
And finally, sitting around there tonight, we have John.
Hey, I'm John Stubbs, coach at Hartlepool Headland in Tyne and Weir, and also assistant performance coach for England Boxing.
I can't remember the last time I called you John, to be fair. Welcome, Stubbsy. Good to see you.
And you.
Too often over the years, I've heard people say, "Come on, man up," and not until just lately, it wasn't really the dumb thing for a man to speak openly about their problems or anxieties they may have had, and that could really show them as being weak. But times are changing with few people beginning to talk more about their mental health in the same way as they do their physical health. So it's good to see people like the boxers like Tyson Fury, Ricky Hatton, Tony Bellew, and even the former footballer and boxer John Fashanu all have spoken openly about their personal issues lately. Earlier this week, I read an article in The Guardian on the mental issues around the England prop forward Joe Marler, who known what he was going through, and during the last World Cup final, he was even struggling with depression in the cup final itself. So depression and stress and anxiety is not something new, but more of us in these times are finding it really hard. And so with the need to check in and listen to our friends and encourage one another to talk is quite important. So maybe let's start a conversation. Anybody want to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to start, Ivan. I think.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I think a number of times, you know, when we open conversations about mental health, it's the question's always asked, how important is mental health? And like, to me, I find that question, you know, I think a little bit irrelevant in this day and age now. Obviously, as you said, you know, that the mental health of a number of, you know, high profile people in the media and in sports has kind of come to light, and they're happy to talk about it. So for me, it's not about how important is mental health. It's how can it not be important? You know, how is it not, you know, how can it not be central to everything we do on a daily basis, whether it's sports, whether it's coaching, whether it's going to work every single day, whether it's dealing with the fallout of lockdown and various bits and pieces. I just think that it's now come to a point where I would hope that it's, you know, it's as normalized as talking about how important is the health of your heart and your lungs and your kidneys and etc. So for me, I think it's, you know, I'd like to start the campfire by just establishing that as far as we're concerned as a coaching team, you know, there's no question about the importance of mental health. You know, the thing here is, how can it not be important? Your brain controls absolutely every function in your body, and, you know, consciously and unconsciously. So it's kind of like, how, you know, for me, there's no question about the importance of mental health, and it's really encouraging to see it becoming quite high profile in the media. But even in terms of, you know, I work in child safeguarding, it's now officially recognised by the government that the mental health and well-being of young people actually officially comes under the safeguarding umbrella within education now. So for me, I think I'm really encouraged by how mental health is getting the attention that it needs. I think my actual question would be is how, do we still have a long way to go in terms of normalizing it, in terms of actually getting the right support for people when they need it?
I think I've got a question on that. I think that is such a powerful statement that you've just made there, and it really resonates with me. But the question is, when you're dealing with young people, do you think there's a chance that we can actually teach people how to have better mental health? Do you think it's always going to be a kind of a circle of somebody's tripped into mental health issues and we try and fix it? Or do you think we're doing enough to actually encourage young kids to look at mental health at a really early age and start to explore what good mental health looks like good physical health and good nutrition and all the rest of it? So I guess the question is, do you think we are beginning to solve it when children are young? Do you think we're beginning to forget about the symptoms and actually look at some kind of cure?
I think we're definitely starting to get there with it. I think it's definitely, we've started. We're on the first couple of rungs of the ladder there, for sure. Yeah. In my experience, in terms of working at school and coaching young people, but I would say that we've got a fair way to go with in terms of actually just being mentally healthy. You need to be physically healthy, you need to be mentally healthy, and it goes hand in hand, and that needs to be a normal topic of conversation. It's not this is a new thing that we now need to talk about.
For sure. No, listen, I really hope you're right. I see no reason why it shouldn't be dealt with at a young age. I mean, that's potentially where a lot of these problems can start from, I guess.
Absolutely.
The interesting thing for me is before lockdown, I was in and out of a few different places in the city doing a bit of consultancy stuff. And I started to notice on the wall, every time you go into an office environment, every time you go into a school, every time you go into a big building where there are lots of people, one of the first things they show you is where the fire exits are and where the fire meeting point is. And then the very next thing you've always seen is who the first aiders are on the floor. You get your fire wardens, you get your first aiders. And I've just started to notice that you'll get 4 or 5 people listed as physical first aiders. And then there are also 3 or 4 people listed under that as mental health support qualified. So it's becoming part of the workplace. If any governing body in any sport, regardless of whether it's boxing or anywhere else, fails to recognise the responsibilities for that, I think you'd look silly. I think in 2 or 3 years' time, this will accelerate. And if you haven't got people there to help with the issues and try and support people, you're going to look pretty woeful, in my view.
I mean, if I can just come in on that, Chris, I think it is really important what you just said, and things like, places pointing out the nominated people that would deal with sort of those issues is really important. But what I think it's important for us as coaches and maybe England Boxing to do as a national governing body is not just play lip service to this, because speaking from experience, I've went over sort of some mental health issues over the last 18 months, and now I'm in the fire brigade, and we've got everything on the walls, and there's forms you can fill in, and it's been dreadful, if I'm quite honest. The actual service and the sort of help I was given from the fire brigade was appalling. So it's okay saying let's put these things in place, but with it being it maybe is relatively new to people, or it's something that we now know we need to provide. But providing something of any sort of substance is a lot different than just putting some pictures, some posters on the walls. Here's a number you can ring and passing it over. Do you know what I mean? So I think when we do move forward as a sport and as coaches, it needs to be done properly, with the right training, the right support. Do you know what I mean? Because I think what can sort of happen is it be even more detrimental if you give them bad sort of service, if that's the right word to use.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And any time a process for, and I hate to try and describe this with something that's not as serious as what you guys are dealing with in the fire service or anybody else who's dealing with people with mental health services. But whenever the trains are late and they say to you, "Oh, you just got to fill out this six page form and you can claim your 12 quid back or whatever," you look at it and you think to yourself, "Do you know what? I can't be asked. I know what that road looks like. I know it's going to be loads of bureaucracy. I know I'm going to have to answer some sensitive questions and this, that, and the other." And sometimes I think that's a really good point to raise. Sometimes the process of actually getting the help is a hurdle that's too big to clear to actually make that jump. It almost needs somebody on the end of the phone immediately, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I mean, recently, one of my, he was a former boxer. He's now back in the gym. I've got him back in the gym. He's only 18-year-old, suffered with some issues. And what I've found every time I've sort of spoke to him is he's sort of goes to his GP, he's referred to, say, someone like Mind, something like that. And what he ends up finding is he phones Mind, and then they go, "Well, we can't really deal with this, so we'll pass you on to someone else," and then someone else. Yeah. And it's fine me saying, phone this person or go and speak to this person, but to actually, for someone who's in that situation, dealing with a problem or, you know, mental health issues, it's a massive, massive step to pick up the phone to phone someone. So if they've done that once and then get told to go and phone someone else, it's huge for them. It's as if, "Oh, hang on, I've took this big step, I've sort of explained myself, and now I have to do it again." So I just think it is, you're right, it has to be something straightforward. And, you know, I mean, this obviously, I'm talking about the GPs here, so it's a sort of, maybe it's above our head as a sport. But I think if we are putting something in as a sport, not to just repeat myself, but again, it needs to be something really simple, and they need to be directed to the right people that can help without then being passed on again. And I understand that there's probably need for referrals and things, but it's one of them. It's a really sensitive issue for someone, or it's a really big issue for someone who's actually going through their things.
If I think about that very quickly in context of an example many years ago of a young male boxer similar age to the guy you mentioned, and if I'm very honest with you, there were whole days, if not weeks, where this young kid could not summon the courage to leave his house. He was
exactly the same.
And literally getting out of bed, doing something productive, and leaving the flat was about the most terrifying thing he could do. So to ask that same person to, like you've just explained, speak to 4 or 5 different people to get the bureaucracy out of the way and fill out some forms maybe, and try and explain himself 3 or 4 times. I mean, it's just you're just never going to jump the first one, are you? No. You're never going to past the first base.
And I think people mean well by saying, "Look, we can't deal with this. We need to pass you on to someone a bit more specialised or something." And I'm sure they're doing it for the right reasons. But to understand that the fact that for something like you say, someone even leaving the houses, sometimes it's a big deal for them. So then to be gather the courage to phone someone, to be told to phone someone else, you know, it's really hard.
Yeah.
So John, would you be looking for someone in that sense then, when you phone them, to say, "Yeah, right, okay, we can't deal with this now, but we'll ring you back"? Is that the type of approach that you'd be more looking for then, or? What?
Yeah, maybe it's that. Yeah, maybe it's that. Maybe it's, you know, we'll contact you, or someone else will contact you. I don't know, because I think it's such a delicate. I honestly don't have the answer, but I think it's just such a delicate sort of thing to deal with. The dread of maybe someone phoning wouldn't be very good for someone. So I don't have the answers, but what I'm saying is that as coaches, I think we need, when if you know, if the national governing body puts something in place where they want us to refer people, or they want us, you know, to even observe it, because really, you know, would there be any training that we could get to identify people? You know, because not everyone comes to you.
I could probably answer that actually. There is a qualification that, just going back to what Chris was saying about when you go into the city, you'd see that there's X amount of first aiders, you know, physical first aiders, and there's a few mental health advisors. There is actually a mental health first aid qualification that can be done, that actually the same way that when we do safeguarding training, you spot the signs of neglect, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, etc. So you spot those signs and you're able to react in a certain way, and you're trained to be able to have that dialogue and have that conversation with the young person. There is actually a mental health first aid qualification that is an accredited qualification that helps you spot signs of, you know, knowing the difference between anxiety and panic, knowing the difference between, you know, something that's clinical and something that's low mood and something's perhaps clinical depression. So there is actually a qualification out there that we can do. I've actually done it myself, just as part of my full-time role that I do in a school, and it is incredibly informative. And I think just adding to what you were saying about having to speak to X amount of different people before you finally reach the right person that's supposed to help you, I think it's really hard because, like you said, sometimes just picking up the phone to speak to the doctor and making that appointment, leaving the house just to go and tell the doctor, you know, I'm really struggling here, is a massive step in itself. And then added to that, you know, some people who I work with end up on a waiting list for 6-8 months to receive specialist support in that respect. So I think it's just, I think the awareness is definitely there, and I think largely there's a willingness to support and help people that do struggle with mental health. I think a big problem is the resources and the funding around it. You know, if one person in every single boxing club, even in London, was to become mental health first aid trained, would cost a fortune. I think it's about a few £100s per person, you know, and who could fund that? Especially right now after lockdown and clubs have lost a lot of money, etc. But I think a lot of it is to do with resources. I think it's, you know, the willingness and the understanding and the awareness is definitely there. The duty of care, there's a massive awareness around that for sure, especially in our sport. We see it a lot, you know, but where's the money coming from?
Could I just ask, Priya, how long was that course? How long did you...
It was a one-day course.
One-day course, okay.
So, it was a one-day course, yeah.
As much as we do safeguarding, then how do you think that would be met and seen if that was another one day put on your coaching education that you'd need to do to be a coach? Do you think that would be acceptable?
I don't see.
Do you think, forget the money, if England Boxing were to say, or we as the national government were to say that every coach had to undertake that, because that could be just as important as safeguarding, you know, as seen as that, and we have to do a first aid course. What would that? How do you think that would be welcomed? Do you think it'd be welcome more than anything else we do?
I think if you asked me that question 10 years ago, I would say no chance.
Yeah.
I think asking me now, I'd just go back to what I said when, you know, in my opening statement for the campfire, is that how can it not be important? You know, and if somebody, and if it's not welcomed, you know, if it's not welcomed, I would question, well, why? Do you know what I mean? Like, for me, it's how can it not be? I think, and I think that coaches who are actually keen to do a good job and genuinely care about the boxers who are walking into their gyms are going to want to do that. I think they're going to want to have more knowledge around the area, around the topic area. I don't know many coaches that would turn their nose up at it, to be honest with you. I think logistically it might be an issue if people are taking time off work and etc. to do the courses and everything else. So maybe, you know,
how you know, that was could it be just watered down slightly so England Boxing could form their own sort of like knowledgeable course rather than you know, do you see where I'm coming from? As England Boxing run their own safeguarding award, could they run a mental health award in that sense and that type of thing? I know they do Boxing Mind, don't they, Laura? They do that.
Yeah, they do the Boxing Mind. Yeah.
I personally haven't sat that one myself. It's on the list to do, so I couldn't really talk about how that would do. But what you're sort of saying, Priya, is there something that we could actually look to have? You know, would that work?
I think it would. Yeah. I mean, for me, you know, having the piece of paper to say that you're qualified is one thing. That to me is almost a little bit irrelevant. You know, for me, sharing the knowledge around the topic area, sharing how to, what strategies you can use with young people, and actually, what do you do in that situation, and like yourself, I haven't done the England Boxing Mind course, but at the end of the day, we're on the first couple of rungs of the ladder when it comes to mental health and sports, etc. So for me, anything is better than nothing. Whether it's a watered down version or, the full qualification, anything is better than nothing. And I think my gut feeling says it would be welcomed.
Because, I mean,
you're dead right.
I think it would have to be, only qualifying 10 coaches around the country is not really going to touch the sides, is it? Do you know what I mean? And, I sat and listened to a lady yesterday talking about one of her own boxers taking her own life. How that's something that you can't really think about, really. And how do you handle it? What preparation could you have for that? So, yeah, I think any kind of help must be good, I would have thought. John?
For coaches and boxers, I would say.
Yeah.
For sure.
John, your thoughts? How do you think, from your personal view, how do you see, could that be something that we could do or engage in?
Yeah, I mean, I think the safeguarding course is something like 4 hours or something. Would there not be scope for it to have 4 hours on mental health and make it a full day course? Maybe. But then by watering the courses down and sort of doing the mental health course that should take all day in 4 hours, do we then come back to the original problem that I sort of mentioned, saying where we're paying a little bit of lip service to it, or is something better than nothing? I don't know.
I think something's better than nothing, but then at the end of the day, you've got to, once you've done it, you're not a counsellor, are you? You're still kind of still in the same predicament that you were before. And if you've got these kids that how do you always know that they're not in good mental health? They might have a brave face on, they might have no clothes, and I think that's kind of the problem, isn't it? Same with the coaches. Like John, if nobody had known what was going on with you, nobody'd know there was, there was any issues there, because it's that brave face that you put on. I think it's getting past that brave face, isn't it? You've got to, because it takes a lot for people to speak out, doesn't it? I suffered quite a lot myself through lockdown, but it's different levels, isn't it? Nobody would have thought that I had bad mental health, but like I did suffer quite a lot. But on the outside, nobody would have known. So it's getting through that stigma, isn't it?
I think so. I totally agree, and also when you kind of draw the parallels between mental health and safeguarding, there's a number of kids that are probably getting abused and groomed, and that we would never know about, because they come in, they're good kids, they they get on with work, they've got good attendance at school, etc., and you just would never know it. But for me, it's just just going back to what you said, something's definitely better than nothing.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
so much of what comes out through the relationship that you build with the young people.
Yeah.
And you kind of, if it's coupled with a bit of mental health knowledge, with your boxing knowledge, with your ability to relate to young people, with your natural inclination to build your relationships, if you just add a little bit to that kind of toolbox, then you're just in a stronger position to be able to spot the signs and help in some way, shape or form. I deliver safeguarding training in my full-time job, and I always say to staff that, not every single member of staff is going to know and spot every single thing about every single child. But if we can just raise that awareness by a little bit, then we just prevent and minimize how much gets missed and slips through. So I don't think it's something that anyone's going to solve fully, but I certainly think that we can just continue to take steps towards building our knowledge base, building our experience, and just being open to actually,
because I think that's the key. I think it's that it is that stigma that people, men can't speak out, or you're not allowed to be this way.
She's a tough girl. She's all right.
Yeah.
I tell you, when Laura said that something's better than nothing, I think if I could just spend 30 seconds running through what was going on in my mind when I took the first safety and welfare for children in sport course. The enormity of the responsibility when the instructor starts telling you about some of the dreadful things that happen and some of the things that would be commonplace in a gym and commonplace in a school that people are dealing with, you kind of feel like someone's just parked the weight of the world on your shoulders. But the point is, it wasn't about, as the course goes on, you realize that it's actually not about trying to train me in 4 hours to deal with that. It's not about trying to train me to be mentally strong enough to process the horrific things that might be going on and actually do something about it. What it is there to do is to say, look, these are the kind of red flags. These are the things that you should be looking for. And if you see them, these are the people you contact. You're part of a chain of command. The minute you think that you're waving the flag and leading the answer across the battlefield, saying, "Oh, I can deal with this because I did a course for 4 hours," you're kidding yourself, and the chances are you probably do more harm than good.
Agree.
Yeah.
So, what I'm trying to say is, if I try and parallel that with a course on mental health and mental health support, it wouldn't be, God, I've got to solve all these problems. I've got to be an expert on this. I've got to do this. But for God's sake, if you see something, then you can contact somebody that's qualified to deal with it. And that might just, I don't want to be dramatic, but that might just put somebody back on the right track. It might save a disaster down the road. So I absolutely support that. I think when Laura said, okay, we might not be perfect, but let's get some grounding in it. Let's get some basic things that might be triggers that as boxing coaches, we should be there to look out for, not just for boxers, but for each other as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, from myself, I think that, there's always some bad things come from war, and people write books and things like that. What happened in war? There's going to be a lot come out from this COVID type of thing, where what actually really did go on and what has gone on and what's not going on. So I feel like, but I do think we will come round different. I think there may be a change of a lot of thought, because a lot of people are having a lot of time to do a lot of thinking, and they are on their own, and they are got different situations now to suit. And I think that could help to drive forward a better thought in the future. I think there could be a more realistic type of hope that we could start talking more, and people who are generating them in things that people are now doing. A lot of people didn't know what Zoom was a year ago. Now nearly everybody knows it. Everybody uses it, and they are
so normal now, isn't it?
Yeah, so everybody's interacting with people, and people are starting to discuss more openly. So hopefully things like that may come out of, that may be a positive thing that comes out of COVID type of thing, more interaction between people and people caring for one another a bit more.
Does anybody sort of think, and I guess Priya, the question is going to you mostly, but does anybody think there is a kind of a adjustment of the way that you think, or the way that you get up in the morning, that can kind of make you a bit more mentally stable? So the reason I asked that is that I didn't read the book, but I read a review of a book, and it was written by a woman in Australia, and you'll have to forgive me because I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find it. It was about 8 years ago, I think. Anyway, long story short, this woman was an absolute legend in the world of palliative care. So she was the lead for lots of private hospices across Australia, and she did such a good job that they put her into the government facility. So they said, "Look, you've done a great job there. Come and do it for the government and look after the sort of standard care that we give most of the population." Anyway, she did all that, and again, it was a roaring success. And then somebody said to her, "You spend all of your life very, very close to people with 6 months or 3 months to live. There's got to be a book there somewhere. Somebody must be learning something about what people think and the thought processes that are going through people's minds in the last 3 to 6 months of their lives. Regrets, wish I'd done more of this, wish I'd done less of that." And the part I read has stayed with me since the day I read it. And it basically said that most people would agree that they wish they'd spent more time doing really simple things. And that might be taking a dog for a walk, spending time with friends, spending time with family, having coffees. Believe it or not, it's not, I wish I had a super yacht and was fishing off the coast of Barbados every weekend. I wish I had a Lamborghini. I wish I had expensive. It's not that. It's not these things that we keep kind of striving for. Life is all about, God, I've got to get there. I've got to be there by the time I'm this age. I've got to do this by the time I'm 40. I've got to be this by the time I'm 50. And we keep pushing for it. But actually, the thing that the woman said, she said, but the one thing at the end of it all, she said, people just want more of the simple things that kept them happy. And most of those things didn't cost a brass brassy. They
comes from human contact and
exactly it
experiencing love and care and companionship.
Exactly that. And she said, but the one thing I'll tell you, nobody ever said, I wish I'd spent more time in the office. I wish I'd spent more time at work. And you know, when you sit there and you think to yourself, God, that was a bit of me. That was, you know, am I going to get, you know, to the end of the road and say, bloody hell, what was it all about? And it had a dramatic effect on me. And, you know, I don't get so chewed up over work anymore. I love the time I spend boxing. That tends to be personally for me, that's a reset button.
Powerful, actually. Just, yeah, that's so powerful. No one ever said, I wish I'd spent more time in the office.
Well, no, not with 6 months.
I'm going to put that in my office somewhere when I go back to work.
Yeah, when you're staring 6 months down the end of the road, nobody says, I wish I'd spent more time making my boss look good. Yeah. So it was quite impactful on me. I don't know, you know, everybody takes it a different way, but certainly I think from that point on, I was able to sort of review the way I was living, and you know, it helped me anyway. Amazing. But it's mad that you have to get to 55 to sit back and say, actually, when I speak to my kids, I'm going to say, look, go and get good jobs, spend a lot of time at school, educate yourselves, do this, but don't get chewed up by it. Make sure if going out on your mountain bike or going for a walk with a dog, or I don't know what you want to do, whatever you're into, just spend some time doing that as a reset button. You've got to find something that sets you back, you know, during the week or during the working day even.
Amazing. I kind of have something to add, but it's a little bit out there, and it's not related really to, it is related to mental health, obviously, but it's not actually along the lines of anything that we've spoken about. But I just want to kind of put it out there, and I hope I explained this correctly. But I was having a conversation with somebody who's quite close to me in recent months, and you know how, God, this is going to probably come out really wrong, but you know how we adjust how we speak and the words that we use? Like, for example, there are certain terms that we don't use anymore because they have racist connotations behind them. Or, you know, there's certain terms that we don't use anymore because it's offensive to disabled people. Or, do you know what I mean? I feel like as much as we have awareness around mental health, and as much as actually, you know, we have evolved and become, I guess, a bit more politically correct in some ways, and sometimes politically correct to a fault. I kind of think mental health terminology and the words we use around mental health has actually been missed out a little bit, because the amount of times, like I've just become aware of this because I had a conversation about a month ago. Previous to that, it was, you know, I was oblivious to it, but it's like the amount of times you'd say something like, oh my God, it was crazy. This was insane. Did you see that fight? It was insane how they did that. It was, oh my God, he's just a lunatic. Like, and I feel like these terms are just used, and not always in a condescending way. Do you know what I mean? Not always in a negative way. You know, that party was crazy. Oh my God, it was amazing. Like, it wasn't, those terms, crazy, lunatic, insane, like those words aren't necessarily used in our dialogue in an offensive way. You know, the same way, like a number of years ago, and I'm not saying this in an offensive way, but a number of years ago, the amount of kids that be like, oh my God, it's so gay. And it's just like, where's that come from? Like, you know, this is irrelevant. And that was kind of, you know, we did a lot of work in schools of like, no, you don't say that. That's offensive. That's, you know. But with mental health, we seem to be okay with using that terminology within our everyday dialogue. And again, not always in an offensive way. Do we need to rethink that? Do we need to kind of look at that again and go, actually, there are people who I know and people who I'm around and people who I work with that do on a daily basis go, I'm a lunatic, I'm crazy, I have depression, and those terms, they kind of internalize them differently. And I didn't realize this until I had this conversation a couple of months ago, and I was like, oh my God, like, and I find myself editing myself and not saying things like, oh my God, it was crazy how that happened. And I just find myself editing myself. And I don't know whether that's just me going a bit too far with it, or whether it's something that, you know, perhaps just needs to be put out there, because it really affected me. Like I really edit myself now, and I don't know whether that's necessary or not, really. It just made me think, so I'm just putting it out there.
When you think about that as well, we actually use the term mental. We say, God, that was a mental night.
It's mental.
I got in at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was mental. I didn't know what day of the week it was. And you think, well, you know, these are phrases that we use. Yeah.
I don't know. Everyone's gone silent, and I'm sure everyone's like, "What's she talking about?" But yeah, I'm just putting it out there. Food for thought, I guess.
Yeah, it might be that vocabulary has to change, right?
Hopefully I haven't offended anyone in saying what I've
said. No.
But when we go back to what we were talking about, you know, encouraging people to look at mental health and that, I've not really ever looked at any stats, and only the thought of putting these 2 days on. And I picked up a mental health foundation study thing, and they're talking out of their big large sample. They had 74 people suffered with stress, were overwhelmed, couldn't cope with life, and things like that. That's 3/4 of that study, and that was quite a big study, you know what I mean? And someone said the other day that one in 4 suffers with mental health issues, you know what I mean? That's me and Stubbsy looking across to another boxing corner. One of us 4 have issues. Do you know what I mean? That when you come to a boxing ring, 4 people, the 4 coaches, 1 in 4. That doesn't seem, you know what I mean? If those facts are right, and I'm only going by what I read and what some people are stating, that's there's some issues there to be sorted, isn't there?
Yeah.
Do you think that, Ivan, though? Because if you'd have asked me 2 years ago and said, "Are you ever stressed?" I'd go, "I'm stressed to death all the time," and I would have said I was really stressed, and I had a load on my plate. I had work, I had the gym, I had this and so-and-so in a championship, I was preparing so-and-so, and that to me was a lot of stress. Then actually going through a lot of stress, which I would now categorise as real stress. Is it people's interpretations of it? Is it the fact that on a whole people don't have enough knowledge around what is actual stress and what is your sort of... I mean, am I wrong? Is day-to-day stress, is your work and, you know, your normal relationship stresses? Surely we all have them anyway. I think there's a big difference in that than stress that's actually affecting your mental wellness, because I think once your mental wellness is affected, it starts to affect your physical wellness as well. And I think when it becomes that, you know, an issue that big, that's when it's real stress or real anxiety or real depression. I think I could say I'm depressed on a Saturday. Well, on last Sunday I was depressed when Liverpool got beat, but I wasn't really depressed, was it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's people's interpretation of it, and if they've really been through it, or do you know, or they just feel stressed. I think there's a big difference.
I agree with you, John. I also think that comes to the point where they are under real stress and they don't even realise it. You know, when they're at that point where they wouldn't speak out, but, you know, I think that's kind of the slippery slope, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, because I think you can, that little bit of stress, maybe sort of the day-to-day life stress, can escalate, can't it?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, maybe something comes in your life, a big issue, and then all them little stresses that I'm probably saying aren't really much of a stress, all of a sudden become massive issues. So, and if people don't know when to speak out or how to speak out,
exactly.
That, like you said, is a slippery slope, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's really interesting, and one of the other things I've got here is a load of boxes, and personally in my life, I'm pretty weak in this sense. If everything is balanced and it's all in the right amounts in the right boxes, I'm on an even keel, and I'm cheerful, I'm happy, I'm engaged in everything I do, and you know, I work hard and I'm good to be around 90% of the time. But the minute the stress starts to stop those boxes having the right amount of effort and balance in them, then I can get tripped up pretty easily, and it tends to be a little bit like dominoes. And the first thing I noticed is, in a period of very high stress, which was traumatic about 5 years ago, which was a sudden death of a very young person in my family, all of a sudden I stopped going to the gym. And the gym was the one thing that time and time again, whenever I'd felt things at work or things at home, I'd just go and grab a skipping rope, wrap my hands up and hit a bag, and I'd come home and I'd cured it. I'd sorted it. But all of a sudden, I wasn't even going to the gym.
Even your normal coping mechanisms don't work. That's when it becomes
all those little boxes, when they're balanced, it's fantastic. But I think, like John said, sometimes one of them can fall over, and then you do take a big hit on something, and you think, "Wow, I'm not even doing the things I do to get through the week now. I'm not even." And for some people, it's a few pints after work. For some people, it's hitting a punch bag. From some people, it's having a tear up or whatever it might be. But whatever gets you through the week, you know what those things are. But all of a sudden, I think, as Priya just said, used the right terminology. Once your normal coping mechanisms go out the window, the whole thing just falls over real quick. Yeah. And I can't even be asked to go to the gym. Can't even, I got no momentum to go to the gym. So it is crazy how quickly it can creep up on you. I mean, I'm through the other side of it now, and Stubbsy, I don't know what you're dealing with, but I wish the same to you as well. And I tended to realise I was getting through the other side of it when things started to get back in their balances again. And there was a bit of gym, there was a bit of work, there was a bit of family stuff, there was a bit of downtime, there was a bit of this, that, and the other. And you start to fill the boxes again, and it all looks like it's balancing. And that was the only realisation I had, that things were getting better, really.
I think sometimes you don't realise how empty you become until you start filling up again.
Yeah, maybe so.
Sounds
maybe
like a bit of a weird analogy to use, but I think as adults, we've all, and I'm guessing here that every single one of us at some point in our lives have felt like my life has just crumbled around me, like I've hit rock bottom. Like I think all of us as adults sitting around iPads, and I'd say around a fire, but it's not quite right. But I think any adult human being, it has reached a point of feeling rock bottom, whatever that looks like. Do you know what I mean? Whatever's triggered that, whatever that looks like, whatever's caused it. We've all faced times where we have hit absolute rock bottom, and it's at those times that I feel like you do get to the point where your normal coping mechanisms don't work. And that's when I think the real problems are, because you can feel stressed and you can feel upset and you can feel anxious, and your normal coping mechanisms can be going to the gym. With me, it's moaning to my girls down the phone. You know what I mean? So and they work, and it's just, you can be like, I've had the worst day of my life. And actually, if you're talking about it and you're doing something about it and you're going to the gym and doing whatever you normally do, well, actually, it's not the worst day of your life. The worst day of your life is when you really can't even do that. And that's a tough place to be, isn't it? And I think that I think one of the questions I would ask as well is that as coaches, especially, we're the ones that are the leaders. We're the leaders in the gym. We're the ones that take care of people. We're the ones that look after everything that's going on, all the boxes, etc. Is there, does it, I'd hazard a guess that a number of us actually feel too proud to admit that we've struggled in that way. That, because we're the leaders, we're the coaches, we're the tough ones. Do you know what I mean? And I think that in terms of mental health and support, and just looking after each other's emotional health, I think as coaches, I think we need to take care of each other, I guess, because actually we're the ones kind of shouldering a lot of the stress in the gym as well, most of the time.
And you tend to just put a lot of pressure on, don't you? You put loads of pressure on yourself anyway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But just being a boxing coach 7 days of the week, going out to shows, can be very stressful, can't it?
I wish we could do it now.
Yeah.
But now everyone's wishing they had that stress.
Now,
yeah.
You know what I mean? That what you just said, empty and filling up. Now we, when we were moaning about going out so often, what we'd give for one night out now.
It's less stressful than the alternative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you as John was saying, stress and putting on a boxing show and running things like that, everyone tells you that's stressful, and but what is stress, and probably that's not compared to what John was saying. You know what I mean? And I think, and I like the way you said we've all got certain points, and some of us are open to talk, and some probably aren't. And that will stay that way forever. I think.
I don't know if there's. I don't know if I'm going to throw the gender thing in here as well, because me and Laura here is women. So, but I don't know whether, like, I always found that as the only female in the gym, most of especially when I was competing and I was helping coaching as well, so I was kind of doing both. As the only female in the gym, I always felt like I had a bigger point to prove. So I always felt like I had to not only train harder and whatever, but I always felt like I could never. Like, it was okay for the guys to show that they were angry, upset, gutted that they might have lost about the night before. We had boys like tearing up in the gym, and I was like, there is no way I can do that because I'm female. Like, I always felt like I had a bigger
You have to be stronger.
point to prove. And I've grown up with 3 older brothers as well, so it's kind of like, even like that whole thing of I have to be the tough one is even more ingrained in me than that. But I don't know if other women feel that way, but I always feel like we can't be the ones to show weakness because because
you're a woman in the gym, and that would never do.
No, I'm glad you relate. Thank you.
Joking aside, Stubbs is the only man in his gym.
Where is that, Stubbs?
Is that actually true?
We've got none left.
No.
How long will it take me to drive there, Stubbsy?
So, tidying up, I think we've had a really good discussion around that, and there's some really good points, and maybe there's some stuff that we can take forward. Obviously, for anyone listening in, I hope you've enjoyed what we've discussed. England Boxing have got a webpage out there that's coming out live soon, or it's already out, Laura. I'm not 100% sure, but I know it is coming out.
For the bite size there.
And they got a website around mental health coming out.
Yeah.
That's set up to help anybody or anything. And obviously then there's the Boxing Mind courses for anybody who's interested to go on that. And I know they've been doing work with some of the youth boxers around the COVID and things like that. So England Boxing are doing a certain amount of work around mental health on this World Mental Health Day. I think I mentioned it in the first part, and I'll mention it again today. I think the gathering and the campfire come on the back of mental issues, really. I spoke to a few coaches all being on their own, and my view was to stay connected. And I think all of us here reached out and joined into that, and it's grown from there. So I think that was for myself, and probably for a lot of people, the gathering became a very strong thing in its time. And I think that was things that
I think that helped us all.
Good for a lot of people.
100%.
So on that note, thank you all very much for giving your time up, and let's hope that we all come a little bit more able to talk, and when we all can work and handle things, and most of all, we can listen to one another. So thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated.
Thanks a lot. Enjoyed the chat.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks for joining us today on The Box Gathering. We welcome the global boxing community to connect and share together in order to grow participation, engagement and performance in all of our boxers. Join the discussion on social media or visit theboxgathering.com for more interviews, skills videos, literature reviews, bout analysis and more. The Box Gathering, in partnership with England Boxing. Connect, share, grow.